Hey, gang, welcome back to the podcast. This is Matt. I got Ed up here. He's on this side of the camera tonight. And we're going to talk about red dots or green dots.
I don't know. Let's see where this goes. We got a bunch of red dots. Let's talk about them.
All right. So I can tell you the evolution of red dots a little bit. Red dots have been around for probably 30, 40 years or more. They've been around a long time. One of my mentors, John Holshin, has been shooting an optic for the better part of 25 years that I can remember. And I don't remember the brand, but I know it was it's pretty compact, but not as small as the ones nowadays. And I know that when a lot of the competitors in a lot of the static sports like Bullseye, they used to call them soup cans. Those optics were like this big around.
I remember that. Yeah.
They're that big, and they were on guns, maybe this size, and they were bigger than the gun. But they were just a singular focal point aiming device, and they found that it was easier to aim and easier to reacquire the sights, and so that technology has translated into things about this big. Okay, so they've shrunk quite a bit from the soup can size down to almost, it's almost like, how do these really work?
So that's interesting because my generation, being a little bit younger, we actually grew up with these both in video games and, real life. So I can't remember a time where red dots weren't at least an option, for guns, whether it be rifle or shotgun or handgun. And you almost always saw, the RMRs or, the ACOGs, you see on the rifles and things like that. So I'm like, we kind of grew up with them. So I don't know quite the generation you're talking about where the dots were the size of cardboard paper towel tubes, and such. But, it is cool to see how far
I'd bring the young guy on the, jeez. For better perspective, right? That's how it goes. What really makes it work is our brain will allow our eyes to align where we need to, and then the dot falls into place. With practice, and like Ed said, this is not magic, everyone. This is going to take work to reprogram your brain.
Well, so yes and no. If you have been shooting irons for a long time, yes, it's going to take a while to reprogram. It did for me. It was several thousand rounds in a couple major classes.
Yeah.
Before I was like,
believe me,
I think I finally understand this.
We were both there.
We were both there. However, I've noticed with new shooters, this is a much easier system to learn than iron sights. And I'm starting to think it's not a bad way to actually start out, because we can take the complexity of the iron sights away and let them learn better fundamentals on everything else. And then later on introduce iron sights, and they've already got good fundamentals. I think it's going to be an easier transition the other way. Yet to be proven, but I think that's where we're at.
That's exactly the way I came up, because while I do shoot iron sights on occasion, I wanted to have something that was easier to be target focused. So now I can just present the gun on target, remain target focused, and once that dot kind of crosses over the top and becomes superimposed, press the trigger when you got that sight picture. So it's a lot less to have to worry about, whereas front sight, rear sight, equal height, equal light, and then front sight focus, and then place it over the target. Like, that's a lot of things to...
It's already too much for a newer shooter.
Exactly.
And we're seeing that in our basic class, that they're struggling with that part of it, the aiming system with the iron sights. As my eyes have gotten older and are not as good as they used to be, the dot increasingly becomes a much easier system for me to use. Focusing at this distance on an iron sight has become much more difficult, where I can eliminate that with the dot. I don't have to worry about that. So
it's just makes things easier. So dots, if you don't have one yet, I would look into them. I really would. I resisted for a little bit because I was just like, well, I'm good with iron sights. I'm hitting what I'm aiming at. I can get, I can replicate my skills. I'm pretty good. I got a really nice orange front sight, and somebody's like, well, that's kind of like the same as a red dot. Why don't you give it a try? And I did. And I was like, all right, there's something to these. And then I went and bought my first red dot, jumped into it, really just decided I'm going to go with one of the top players in the game at the time. And I mounted it on one of my guns, and I was just like, okay, this is getting better. but I was trying to figure it out along the way. And then my growth went into, I need to go take a class.
Right.
I just need to go take a class.
But the most important thing is, and especially, having taken Red Dot, either instructor classes or otherwise, is if it can fail, it will fail at some point, and you have to know what to do when it does fail.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
We
and
may
we're
have a
not gonna-
class that you can learn.
We are not going to give away the answer of what to
That's
do
right.
when it does fail.
No.
But if you get a Red Dot, know that it does have some limitations to it. It is an electronic device. It's battery and electricity operated. So it is one additional thing that can and will go down, and you have to know how to get the gun back into a fight with a downed optic and be effective with it. So
When we focus on the dots, it really comes down to personal choice. Number one, budget. What are you willing to spend on a site? Okay, there are sites out there that I've seen online for 150, 200 bucks.
this one, under 100.
What's that one, Ed?
Right,
Let's
so
get
let's
into it.
go
We'll go
into
right
it.
down.
Yeah, go down.
So this one is a Aid Optics Delta. This one was about $60, $69 or so. It's the only one that I know that has these little window cuts on the side, designed to make it lighter. And this one in particular happened to be green. And we'll get a close-up of this in a little bit. It was my intro to Red Dots, really.
It was your first.
It was my first one. I was not confident. I had just dropped a couple $100s on a Glock, and I was not prepared to drop that same amount of money on something like a tenth of the size that I really didn't understand how the technology worked.
Right.
So I'm like, let me get something that will get my foot in the door. I'll mount it and see how it works. And, so far this little guy is on my Ruger 22s, as a range toy when I go.
Okay.
It's lightweight, it's cheap, and it does have its limitations, as we'll say. The window is not as large as some of the others, and the windage and elevation locks and screws for it, they don't have that tangible click. It's just a smooth,
Okay.
and I know a lot of people want that kind of one click equals 1/4 MOA
Right.
or, something of that nature. But this got me into Red Dots, how to mount them, how to fix them, how to learn how to shoot them. And I would say for a training handgun or a 22 that you want to teach somebody the fundamentals of using optics, it's a nifty little guy. And it's pretty cool.
And here's the advantage to that is if it broke, you didn't have a lot invested.
Right.
If you broke it doing something, you didn't have a lot invested, you weren't going to cry. Right? You were just like, well, $70, let me go get another one.
I'll get another one. Yep, no problem.
And I, when I was looking at this earlier, this feels like a mostly aluminum chassis too. So again, you said it's very lightweight. The glass, who knows, there's different quality glass out there. Some are a, more of a plasticky polymer setup, and some of them are actual glass with coating.
Right.
Yeah.
But, obviously that drives the price up, right? So, the other sites that are out here, like I've kind of fallen into one brand because that's what I've liked. All right. I think I own three different brands. I've got this one that I got. My first one was the Trijicon. This is my first. Okay. And
So we've gone from one end of the
Scale
price
to the
spectrum
other.
way to the
Yeah.
other side. So tell us about that one.
Dave decided when I jump into this, I'm just gonna
Go to the deep end.
both feet in, and I'm gonna go underwater and hold my breath for as long as I can, right? And this is the one I got. I chose the Trijicon based on the reviews at the time. As I said, I've gotten this. I don't know when I bought it. The receipt's still not in the box, but it's probably somewhere between 6 and 8 years that I got this. I'd have to go back and check, but at the time, the Trijicon RMR was the big dog of the sight systems.
Yeah.
Okay? Some of the other ones are still up and coming or just not well known, at least in my circle. Like when I started researching, Trijicon kept coming up. This one kept coming up, and I was like, all right, there's got to be something to it. Let me go check it out. And I shot one on a gun, and it was like, okay, this is pretty impressive. I like it. The dot wasn't too big, but not too small, because dot sizes all over the place. There's some out there with 10 to 12 MOA dots for some of these competitors. And then, there's some that are 2.5.
Right.
So there's a huge variation there, and I think this is a 6.
So for people who don't know what that means, it's literally the size of the dot when you're looking at it on the target. So it's going to be from very small to very large. And a lot of it is personal preference on what size you want.
Yeah.
I go in the middle. I like 4, 4.5, somewhere in there. I find it just doesn't cover up a lot of the target. Where if you go bigger, it's going to cover more of the target, especially at distance. So,
But what's the advantage of that, right? So bigger dot means faster target
can be
acquisition.
faster, right?
Possible.
Yep. Yep.
And it's basically, what's your purpose? Are you going to do target shooting, or are you going to do this? This was going to go on my carry gun. I actually had a model of I think going on my 17, and I was going to use that to carry, and I was going to train on that and get used to this. Mm-hmm. So that's what I got. That was the mission. Mm-hmm. That's what I got it for. And then having this, I figured out, all right, well, how to adjust it, how to, it was a learning curve for me, but I was like, I had to dig in.
Yep.
I know how to adjust sight systems, so this one took a lot easier for me to adjust. Yeah. And then once it was adjusted, I found that some of the targets I was shooting, at 7 yards, it was covering up a 2-inch circle. So at 7 yards, I got what looked like a 2-inch dot on the target. Yep. And I initially got turned off because I was like, that's too big. How can I get accurate hits?
Mm-hmm. But do you need anything more accurate than that?
Again, what was my mission, right? And when I discovered that it was more of getting the dot on the target and getting hits where the dot is that matters, especially in a carry mentality and defensive shooting mentality, I was like, okay, now I can settle down, and this was okay. And I probably put 1,500 rounds to that thing. Okay, give or take. I had it on there for quite a while. And then I started discovering some of these other sights that are out there that, like this one's pretty chunky. This one's rugged.
So that was always the advantage of the Trijicon, is they were very reliable, very rugged, right? And they still are. That's definitely an advantage.
Oh, yeah.
If money isn't the option, Trigicon's great. There's only one thing, and you holding that up reminded me, that I'm not a fan of with that sight. And that's the fact the battery is on the bottom.
It's on the bottom.
And you have to remove the sight to change the battery out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And every time you take the sight off,
in theory,
you put it back on, you're probably going to have to re-zero it.
That's right. Exactly.
Probably.
Yeah. In theory, you could get it to return to 0, but that's not my
plan
experience.
on it.
Plan on reciting.
So, last plug for the Trijicon RMR, because it's been around for so long.
Yeah.
Almost most modern handguns will have that footprint and that
it's
mounting system.
Yes.
It's the standard. So when there are other brands, they say it shares the Trijicon RMR footprint. It means if it's cut for the RMR, it will also fit that one. And we'll go over into more of that when we actually decide to mount these to the gun.
Well, do it. But that's a good point. And it kind of comes down to like this is my first red dot, which was Hollow Sun. And this one I always forget is the 407 X2, right? And I kind of took what he had already done, saw the Trijicon, didn't love the fact I had to take it off to get the battery. And I went with the Hollow Sun a lot because it was very well thought of. It seemed to be pretty rugged and reliable, but also it has a battery tray. So the battery comes out the side. It can be replaced without removing the sight. And I really thought that was a pretty big bonus for this.
Big advantage there.
It still is a chunky sight. And to Ed's point about mounting,
right,
especially on many guns that are set up for the Trijicon, this needs an adapter, which is a plate that goes underneath, which is okay, but it adds an additional point of failure and some complexity when you're trying to purchase the sight and the plate and the gun and making sure all three of those play well together.
Yep.
And I originally actually mounted this with the plates that had come with my gun and had a problem with it out of class. You were there for that.
Yep.
And went then and got a better quality aftermarket plate. And that's something sometimes you got to play around with and experiment with, is what's going to work and what's not going to work. And knock on wood, I've had no problems with this since I switched to that other plate. So
here's a funny point. This plate is the original plate that came with the gun.
And you've never had a problem with it.
I've never had a problem with it.
So, I know. We were joking about that at the class.
Yeah. In fact, this was the gun I was using at the class, and yours kept...
But mine literally bent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird.
Yeah, it was weird and very upsetting because I had a really good score in that class, and then all of a sudden I had a very nice group, except it was way up here on the target.
Yeah. And like you said, it was a failure point, and then you rectified it by getting just a differently made plate.
Better quality plate.
Yeah, better quality plate.
But it also adds weight to the whole system. I mean, there's
Adds a couple ounces here, a couple ounces there.
even a quarter ounce here. Add it to the gun.
But that was your first sight, whereas mine was the Trijicon, and I've evolved since then.
So we went low end, budget, high end, and then in the middle.
Matt right in the middle.
Yeah.
He looked at Ed and went, eh. He looked at me and went, no way.
No way.
But where did you evolve from there?
I haven't really. I'll be honest. I'm pretty much stuck on Holosun.
Okay.
I like the price point. I like the quality. I've had good luck with them. There's a run of Holosun.
That's why you just put that one on your 43X. Yeah.
And we won't talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about the
talk about
mounting
that
and
later.
everything a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, so you had your starting point.
Right.
Okay, where did you go after that?
So after that, I started getting into competition type shooting. So that meant a much longer slide and much longer sight radius. But it also meant I wanted a dot that you could drive a Ford F-150 through, and you don't get much bigger than a Trijicon SRO. Like, this has been the gold standard for competition shooters for a very, very long time. It's a very large window.
Yeah, let's compare.
Yeah, compare the two, you know, like you can put the RMR through.
I could almost,
the window of the SRO.
That's about, I would say, 25 to 30% bigger than this.
Right.
God.
That's a huge difference.
So it's a really, really big window. This is, I think, a 2.5 MOA dot, which is a little smaller than I would want for a competition gun, but I couldn't find the 5 MOA one for it. So this is what I use for competition. And because, yes, it is a Trijicon, I had to dish out quite a bit of money for it. But again, when you talk about IDPA, USPSA, even GSSF to a certain degree, people want the SRO for the longest time because it's a huge window, it's fast sight acquisition, and bonus, it fits the Trijicon RMR footprint. Well, Trijicon to Trijicon.
Yep.
So having said that, this was my entry level into competition shooting. It's lasted for a very long time. Would I use this for a carry? No, but that's just because of the sheer size of it. This thing is printing a lot when I carry. So I would not use this for a carry option, and we'll go into my carry option later. But yes, this is my trophy safe queen competition race gun, kind of thing. When I go to competition, this is the one that's coming out.
Everything but carry.
I'm going to see a lot of these, when you go to competition. So that's where I went to.
Yeah. So, Ed brought up a good point, window size. A lot of people have thought, well, like that. Remember the big soup cans we talked about earlier? What did they allow them to do? They could look through that, and everything they needed to see was in that window. The dot, the target, everything. Whereas we get smaller, okay, we're limiting our visual field of view through the window, but it doesn't mean we can't see something around it either. What other factors should we consider?
There's one thing that we have not really talked about, and that's reticle color and the different types of reticles.
Different
I was just going to say, when you mentioned your Holosun, I'm surprised you didn't plug in for the multiple reticle option.
Right, yeah, that's right, because that has the multiple.
So what do we have? We have, so let's just pick one. Let's go with the Holosuns, because I'm most familiar with them. So Holosun has the circle, which is pretty good size.
Yeah.
Okay, it's pretty good size. And then they have a dot.
Right.
Or if you really want to go crazy, they've got a circle and a dot that you can put on the screen at the same time. You can just select it.
Or so just a dot. I mean, that's,
You can have just the circle, which
which
I found is at about 7 or 8 yards is about the size of the A zone of one of your IDPA targets.
Yep.
Okay, pretty close to that 8-inch circle at about 7 yards. Whereas the dot is probably about, like maybe a couple inches diameter on the target. And it all depends on what you want, what you pick up easier.
I personally just prefer the dot. And I think a lot of that is going back. I shot aim points on rifles with just a dot for years. I've never been a fan of even EOTechs. I don't like a lot of extra clutter on that screen. I like to be able to see. The whole point is seeing what I'm shooting at. I want to see what I'm shooting at. So I like just the dot. That's me. Your mileage is going to vary. So.
Your experience will vary.
Exactly.
Ed, what did you find? Because it sounded like you were dealing with a small dot on your SRO.
Yep. So for the SRO, I wanted a bigger dot. Couldn't get it. But I wanted a big window, and this is just the dot. There's nothing really, fancy about it. There's no multiple reticle system that you can choose from. And really for competition, it's just as the gun is crossing over the target or moving onto the next target, that's when you're pressing the trigger. So it's not a whole lot of time that you're spending time on target in order to, get that perfect shot, line up the exact circle dots, things like that. You're going for kind of a timed competition. So you're pressing the trigger just as that dot crosses over the target, and getting that good side picture.
So
not
kind of
perfect,
getting
but
good enough accuracy instead of
Exactly.
perfect.
that's exactly right.
Acceptable accuracy. It again, your choice is going to be your choice. What's your mission? What do you expect out of the gun? What do you want to get out of it? And what do you like?
Yeah.
Is really what it boils down to. Do you like the circle? Do you like the dot? Do you like both? Then use it.
Right.
If you can articulate why you want to do it that way, go with it.
What works for you?
Yeah. Don't take our word for it. Try them. If you get a Holosun, try both, work with both, and then test yourself and see what the results are.
Yeah.
The
While
results will
you're
tell you.
testing, I will also say try it at low light conditions,
Yes.
regular light conditions, and you'll be really surprised about how much dialing that brightness up or down is going to make a difference.
Huge.
If you are shooting at daytime and you have that dot turned all the way up, and if you're using the big circle, kind of thing in order to get shots on target at 10, 15, 20 yards or so in full daylight, and all of a sudden you have that same brightness setting set up and you're shooting in low light conditions or you're shooting at night. We did some night shooting classes. I forgot to turn that sight down and I just
I think I could see your sight from 10 yards behind you.
Like it's just a green circle completely obscuring the window. I can't see that target at all.
Correct.
Yeah, you get a little bit of extra scatter on there, and
I know some
amazing.
of the Holosuns have the auto brightness or auto wake up
yep.
feature. One of those, I'm not sure entirely how that works.
So
but-
Holosun has what they call shake awake. I think every sight has the shake awake.
Okay.
So it'll go to sleep after being idle for a certain period. I don't think it'll ever happen if it's in a holster being carried. It's got to be totally still.
Yeah.
So in your safe and not touched for
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I literally I tested it to see how long it took to go out. And I would gently open the safe and then look to see if I could see the dot. And after a while it did go off. It might have been 10 minutes or something. I don't know. But they have the shake awake, which any little movement, just a tiny jar and it's on, which is okay. That's what you want. You want it to be awake when you need it. But they also have, you can change the settings on most of them for brightness self-correcting. And I actually turned it off on mine because I found that sometimes if it was, if it was a little dim, it would dim the dot down, which is, you don't want too much, but it dimmed it down too much for my taste.
Yep.
And in the bright light, it wouldn't dim up as much as I'd want it to. So it was always trying to find this happy medium.
So do you keep yours at medium brightness? Very
Yeah,
bright,
right
lower end?
right now it's probably 3 clicks down from the highest setting.
Okay.
If I turn it on really high, it becomes a really bright blotch. It's there. And if I can crank it all the way down so you almost can't really see it. So if I'm doing some range work and I want to get some really good precision stuff, I'll tap it right down. I'll go down to where I can just barely see it, and I'll just be able to still deliver some good hits.
He's also got older eyes, guys, so your mileage will vary.
Yeah.
So you know what? That actually brings up a good point. I'm nearsighted with a very small hint of astigmatism. Okay, so what happens is, without my corrective lenses, the dot becomes a little oblong and very little jagged edges around it. But with my corrective lenses in, that is a very precise laser dot.
Yeah.
So that might change things. But does it mean that I can't see it without my corrective lenses on? No, I can still see it. I've shot with just standard eye protection, no correction, and I've gotten pretty much the same results. A couple of the other selection criteria you're going to run into, of course, we have, we'll talk about color, whether red versus green in a little bit, but most of these sights that I have, on all of these guns are what's called an open emitter, meaning that the emitter in the back here is open. So if, like this was upside down and I get water on it, there's going to be water on the emitter. There's going to be dust and crud on the emitter. Yep. Luckily, it's carried this way. So all of the crud lands on this side of the window instead of the emitter, which I'm sure they thought about that. But there's also, which I will be investing in one or two of them, and I'm probably going to be talking to Ed about this thing. Ed's got one that's a closed emitter. It's fully enclosed. So Ed, tell us about your submission to the podcast.
So the closed emitter, I think, is something that's really becoming new as far as red dots and things like that go. For a long time, I think there were only one or two models. The Aimpoint Acro P1 was the first one, I think the first one, that had a closed emitter. And
that was the size of a mailbox.
Yeah, well, we'd like to say it's putting a microwave or a refrigerator basically on top of your gun. The advantage of the closed emitter, though, was that it's impossible to get, well, not impossible, very difficult for dust, water, any kind of atmospheric changes and things like that. This is basically a gas-filled chamber with your dot, in it. So it's much more difficult in order for it to be obscured, for it to have any type of interference, on this type of emitter. Nothing can get in front of the emitter or behind it, so that you're always going to get that dot in that window. The obvious disadvantage of something like this is you're putting something that's twice the size, of one of the other dots, on there as far as, real estate and total coverage and
well, if
size.
you look at it, the length is about the same. Mm-hmm. Okay? The height is about the same. Mm-hmm. It's just the body itself.
Yeah.
Yep.
A bigger bubble.
If we do a comparison, from front of the lens to the back of the housing, the Holosun's half the housing that this one is.
Right.
What is it? The Kraken. I like it. I might just buy one because of the name. I'm just going to get one because of the name.
Release the Kraken.
Now, notice it does have a different mounting setup.
Absolutely. So the Swamp Fox Kraken comes with multiple plates that I think they ship with it. Somewhere in here. So we have one for...
I think there's a lot of accessories in there.
Yeah, it does. This is one for the RMR plates. This is one for the EOS plate. So we have a couple of different options that Swamp Fox, realizes your gun may not be cut for an RMR. So depending, they give you optional plates that, you can use in order to mount onto your specific type of firearm. Again, closed emitters, they're getting, really popular now. Swamp Fox has their Kraken. Aimpoint just came out with the Acro P2 model, and I know Holosun has their 509T, I think, which is also a closed emitter. So, guys, if you haven't tried one of these, I recommend it. They're great, especially in conditions where it's raining outside. We've done some training with that. And you don't have the same type of interference or dispersal of light kind of effect, when you're looking through the window. But again, be prepared to pay a little bit more for the closed emitters. And of course, this is going to print a little bit more and dig a little bit more into you if you're going to be carrying concealed. So advantages.
They did chamfer the corners a little bit, which they thought about that.
Absolutely.
What's the range, the price range on that one?
So the Swamp Fox Kraken, this is, I would say, in the mid-tier range. I think this was $300, $400.
That's not bad.
Which is not bad for a closed emitter. So the Aimpoint Acro, I think, is $200 or $300 on top of this. So
yeah, I remember when I upgraded and got this kit for the M17, they have a matching color closed emitter sight from the Romeo line, and I was looking at the price of that, and I'm like, that's way more than another gun. Mm-hmm. But I've heard a lot about that site, that closed emitter site that they have, and a lot of people are saying it's wonderful. But I'm like, I don't need that level to fit my mission and what I want to do with it.
Yep.
So, I think I violated the law of nature and I put a Holosun on my SIG slide. So, nothing weird's happened yet. No tidal waves, the moon hasn't disappeared, and there's
Six just
that may be
exited
happening
chat.
over here soon.
yeah,
so.
maybe it's happening over here soon.
Just saying.
So there's definitely options. Matt over here has his 365 slide with one of the SIG Romeo sights
Romeo, yeah.
with a bottom feeding battery,
With a bottom feeding battery, I'm not in love with.
bottom mount, bottom feed, whatever. It's where you put the battery. It's all that matters, right? But this one is
Polymer.
Yep. Okay. And this one is the Romeo Zero Elite. Okay. And
That one's made by SIG?
That is a SIG.
That's a SIG proprietary. Yep, right from SIG. Yep. And this one doesn't have a whole lot of external controls.
It has one button in the inside. You turn it on.
Yep.
You turn it off, and you can tap it to change the brightness levels.
There you go.
So you just tap on it, and it'll change the brightness levels.
And I'm guessing that this is made for the small-bodied guns.
It is. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Which doesn't hang over that much.
It's
not
essentially
that much
made
bigger.
for your 365s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't hang over that much. In fact,
The Holosun is more.
the Holosun is just a tiny bit more wider, but it's probably maybe a millimeter.
Maybe.
It's not that much.
Yep.
But this is meant for direct mount.
Yes.
Okay. And
No plate.
No plates, nothing. You just gotta, make sure you mount it properly. It does have height and windage adjustment, so you can get it in there. Dial it sucker in, right?
Yep.
But again, what's your mission,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you've got a smaller gun and you're rocking the 365 and you've got the optics ready models,
Yeah.
well, maybe you'll look at one of them. And I see that it's a little notch and a little
It's
sight
got a
indicator on the back of it.
rudimentary backup iron sight.
Yeah.
Which is actually something we could mention because that gun has tall
Yep.
iron sights as backups. Completely not needed. Like really not needed.
Compared to Glock, which still has its stock adjustable sights.
My Glock carry gun
Yep.
factory sights. This Glock carry gun factory sights. So
Yeah.
don't
The
need,
SIG conversion has taller sights on the rear because that's how the plate came.
right.
I didn't have a choice, whereas Ed has.
The Staccato has, ideally, would be suppressor height sights. However, the SRO is so tall that it kind of blocks that. And for competition, if you're relying on your backup sights, like you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah, things went
already,
horribly
so-
wrong.
Yeah. Actually, we could delve into that real quick.
Uh-huh.
I get questions all the time. People are, they're always contacting me, what site do you have? What are you running? What backup sites do you have? I go, I don't.
Yep.
Actually, on my the SIG 320 compact that I bought, it came with taller sights.
Yeah.
And I personally find that taller sights, we'll back up real quick. The idea of getting a red dot with a big enough window mounted on your gun is so you can see through it. You can
Yes.
see things and
Correct.
only see the dot, hopefully. Whereas you put taller sights on there
Yep.
so you can use them as backup sights, which I can understand to an extent. But they do take up some real estate in your sights.
They eat up part of the window.
Yeah, they're
for
part of the
sure.
window.
Yeah.
And typically, they're going to be lined up, or the sights are going to be where your dot's going to be.
Yeah.
So you're losing a little bit below the dot of some field of view.
Yeah, the dot sits literally on the top of this
Yeah.
site, like right on top.
Yeah. Guys, also a quick note, when you're zeroing it, don't adjust your dot to your iron sights.
No.
Oh, God, no.
You can get it close, but shoot the dot
Yes.
to adjust it. Don't adjust it to the iron sights and think you're good, because it's two different sighting systems and they aren't perfect.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
Doesn't work. Not one gun that I've had have I adjusted that to the actual dot on the front sight and had it shoot exactly the same.
Like I
Because
said, this one
they're
sits on top.
independent.
This is probably the closest of all three of these, where this dot does sit right up on top.
Okay.
But if I even tried to use like this, you can't do it with
do
stock height sights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a quick note.
Yep.
We may talk about that in mounting in the next video. So don't be so worried about having backup sights.
You got to also realize that all of us, these guys especially, have done extensive training with red dot classes. And I don't know a single, at least advanced red dot, that will not spend a significant portion of time with a downed optic. Once you take those classes, even with a downed optic, occluded optic, which means you can't see through that window at all because it's either taped up or covered in mud or something like that, you can still be effective out to what, 10, 15, almost 20 yards?
Probably, yeah.
At least 15.
Yeah, without sights at all, no backup sights, no dot, and an occluded window.
Heck, some of the training, they take painter's tape and they put it right over the front of the window. So you can't see through the window, but the way our brain works with our eyes, it isn't a factor. And then they put tape over the emitter.
Yep.
So there is no dot.
Teach you skills on how to adopt to that. So, and yes, we do that. So another shameless plug for our red dot courses. If you want to gain confidence in your system that you're going to carry, come take a class and you'll learn how to be confident with your gun, and you'll understand a lot of the stuff we've talked about of why dot size is going to matter, why brightness is going to matter, whether or not you want to continue to use backup sights or not.
Right.
Because once you understand the mechanics of all this, then you'll be able to make a better choice. You really will. So another factor.
Yep.
What color do we use? Is it red or green? Okay. And what's better? Honestly, I personally have a red because that's what I'm most familiar with, and I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I have all red. What about you? Yours are all red?
Mine are all green.
Yours are all green.
With the exception of the SRO, which doesn't come in green.
You didn't have a choice on that one.
But I spent a little too much of my youth with laser pointers and shining that red dot in my eyes or my friend's eyes and such. So I really, really don't like red lasers.
You have an aversion to a red dot, huh? Okay.
It's very harsh for my eyes, and I don't like it.
Okay.
And again, your mileage will vary. I find the greens a little easier to pick up during the daytime as well. So that's why I use green. I hate the fact that most places charge an extra $10, $15, $20, $50, for the green option.
Yep.
But again, it is what it is. I prefer green, but
It's
what works for you.
It's obviously different in the emitter. Actually, it's another thing we got to talk about. But the emitter, red emitters are probably more popular. They're more widely available, so they're easier to make. They're just easier to get them into the product. Whereas greens may not be as available. I know from past experience with laser optics and laser generation, there is a difference in circuitry and the diode itself.
Right.
So that could be why it's a little more expensive, or it's supply and demand. I've talked to people, I've tried them both. I can see them both equally as well, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Right? I pick them both up. They're both brilliant to me. I can dim them down. I can still see them. I don't think I see one any better than the other from my perspective. But I just went with the red because that's what I went with. That's all. That was my choice. I know people that all of their dots are green. I know a lot of people like that. It's because that was their choice. Okay, as long as it works for you, it works for you. Who cares?
Right.
Right? Could Ed pick up a red dotted gun and do it? Yeah, he'd probably have some PTSD flashbacks and some trigger moments. But it wouldn't stop him from shooting the gun. Same thing for me. It's like, oh, hand me one that's got green. Okay, I'll shoot it. Doesn't matter. It's just my preference is the red dot.
Yep.
So,
all right.
So let's see. We've covered a bunch of different choices. We've covered the options, price range, right? Lots of ching and where to go? Here it is. Way over here. Last coin coming out of the pocket. Medium coin coming out of the pocket. Somewhere in the middle, somewhere a little high middle. It just depends on what you need, what your budget is, and what your mission is, right? Body type, we've got rounded, we've got more square, aluminum, more of a skeletonized thing, closed emitters.
Closed and open, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of options out there, which is really good.
Yep.
It might sound confusing to all those. Oh, can we get a square top one because it's easier to, because my eyes like horizontal and vertical, or do it round? I don't know. It's whatever fits your bill. It really does. I really, when I shoot all of these, I don't see a big difference in any of them. I just shoot them. I'm looking for the dot.
Yep.
That's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for the dot on the window, and I'm good. It doesn't matter what size, what shape the housing is.
Right.
As long as I can get the dot on target, I'm happy. All right, so it looks like we've covered a bunch of details on here. I hope we didn't totally confuse everybody, but the thing is I hope we kind of helped you narrow it down, or at least give you an insight to the amount of options out there that, whether, if there's only one site out there, it's only going to fit one group of people, right? And then somebody who doesn't like it is not going to get a red dot. So it's kind of good that there's a lot of options out there, both in price and reticle and size and everything.
Right.
Ed, final thoughts on the whole red dot selection idea?
I definitely think it's going to be the new technology as far as firearms go. So I would say get a red dot, get some training, check out episode 2 where we teach you how to mount it and zero it. And if you don't feel fully committed to the red dot way, make a couple of friends, range buddies. I'm sure somebody out there, has a red dot, and go to the range with them, borrow their firearm just to see what the sights look like, and what it's like, and to fire it, shoot it, and try it,
Yeah. Matt?
Cool.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the biggest thing, especially if you're switching to a red dot, is get some good training, because that'll give you the confidence and understanding on how to make the system work for you. That's what did it for me.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of this whole thing. And really, if you do a little research, you can't go wrong. There's a lot of good options out there to choose from. Pick something you think is going to work for you and give it a shot. So that's my thing on the whole thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll echo what these guys said. My journey was, I was going through it. I had enough info to do okay with it, but I didn't have enough info to do good with it or great with it. Right. So my evolution was going to get there. I was figuring it out. I was on the path. I wasn't just muddling around somewhere in the weeds trying to hope for the best. I was getting there. But when I finally committed to say, that year that, I did, this course, and this course, and then this one, and really just that last course brought it home. That shortcutted my journey.
Yeah.
It really made it better and more efficient. So that's another plug for, if you're going to get a red dot, talk to us. We'll give you some thoughts if you're not sure. Hopefully we've answered a bunch of questions on this, and then you're going to be able to want to get out there and just go, I like that one. I like the idea of this one. And we've pointed you in a direction to do some research. Yep. When you get it mounted, when you're ready to go, call us. And then we will get you training with it. Yep. And then we will teach you how to acquire the red dot, how to use it, how to track it, how to manage it, and how to basically turn your gun into that next level shooter so that you can evolve with your gun, and then life gets easier. It just gets easier. Every time I'm shooting this thing, it's almost like I feel like I'm cheating. I really do. It's like, last weekend I was running the full-size SIG, and it was like I had to try to miss. I'm just up there going boom, boom, boom. Oh my God, it's working. It's because the system is working. The brain's working with the eyes, with the sight, and it's producing good results on the target. And it was just like, it's just so easy. It's almost like, where was this for all of our lives, right?
All of their lives. It's been around for all of my life, so.
Whatever.
Right. So everyone, please,
like, comment, subscribe. We want to know
Absolutely.
what dots you guys are using. If we didn't mention it, put it in, and maybe we'll do another part where we review more dots that are out there.
Absolutely.
Put your questions down in the comments.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Please send us info. And until next time, thanks for checking in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.